This is absolutely Essendon, the YouTube channel that places a stethoscope on the chest of Bomber fans whenever they're feeling under the weather. Today, DT, we have a special treat. We have an ex-red and black man who originates from WA, played in the Waffle for East Fremantle. He was drafted number 54 in the 2007 national draft. Is this coming together, DT?
Yep, beautiful.
You're putting the puzzle together?
I can't believe he was drafted 54. That's amazing.
Maybe we need to take that.
Pick of the draft, I would say.
Some of the things we've said about the recruiting side down at the club. Anyway, debuted against the Western Bulldogs in round 21 of 2008. Played 219 games in the red and black. Was all Australian in 2014. Won the Crichton Medal in 2015. Kicked 122 goals. He is going to be sitting in this chair shortly. Make sure you stick around. I'm Smoking Joe. That guy on the other side is DT. And joining us today, cue the rapturous applause, it's Cale Hooker. Cale.
Welcome.
Just imagine a studio audience and rapturous applause.
Well, there's tens of thousands of Essendon fans already tuning in, so...
Thank you.
And non-Essendon fans, of course.
Possibly. Probably.
Cale, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Absolutely fantastic to have you here. You're following in the footsteps of the great Gary O'Donnell, who joined us last year. So we only ever have one fantastic guest every year, but they're always an All-Australian and a Crichton medalist.
Fantastic. Thank you. I feel very honoured to be on. Thanks, guys.
We thought there's a lot that we want to unpack today. We are going to go back into the history, of course, and we definitely want to drill down on a couple of very special, heartwarming moments that you gave us as Essendon supporters, and God knows over the last few years they haven't been a massive number. And we also got some viewer questions as well. So there's a lot to go through. But I just thought today maybe we'd start with what life looks like after footy, because you haven't let yourself go. You look like you could still run out there.
I haven't let myself go too bad, but if you saw me about 12 months after I retired, I looked a little bit different.
You went straight to the paddock?
That's right. Changed a little bit, but I found my groove now. And Mum and Dad last weekend had me working out at the vineyard pretty hard, so that's keeping me fit enough.
Oh, really? What are you, stomping on the Shiraz, are you?
Yeah, well, picking the grapes and doing all that thing with the family. So that's keeping me busy, and also doing a little bit of coaching out at Haileybury under the tutelage of Matthew Lloyd. So he's whips me around the oval and makes sure I'm on top of things.
Lloyd also looks amazing, right? He hasn't put on an ounce of fat since he's retired.
Right. He's the ultimate professional, whether he's doing coaching or media or anything. He's just a professional, so I'm sure he's still the same.
So tell us about Haileybury. You're in there in a coaching role. How's that going?
Oh, it's been awesome. So I always had a bit of an interest in coaching, and Lloydie rang me up at the start of last year and sort of said, would you be interested in coaching the back line? We've got a pretty good lineup. We've got Scotty Pendlebury as a midfield coach. We've got one of the teachers who's a really good teacher of things in the game as a forwards coach, Shaq, and I was sort of reluctantly accepted, and then I've absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
The kids are awesome, the program's awesome, the school's awesome, and learning off Lloydie and adding a bit of value myself along the way has been amazing.
That's kind of like one hell of a coaching lineup. Pendlebury, Hooker, Lloyd.
That's right. Between Lloydie and Pendlebury, they're a pretty good lineup.
Yeah,
so I learn a lot of them, and I love it.
Fantastic.
It's for those that don't know, interstate, Haileybury is one of the elite schools academically in Melbourne. Well, but it sounds like
clearly sporting-wise,
the sporting program is no slouch.
So who are your arch rivals down at Haileybury?
I think historically Caulfield is a big rival, and Brighton Grammar a big rival.
Right.
So we're actually playing Brighton Grammar round 1 this year. Okay. So that'll be a big game for both schools.
And who's on the coaching in some of these other schools? Or is it similar? A lot of ex-AFL players, or
similar. A huge range of good names and good coaches. But Lloydie, I think, have to take the cake. I think he could be a great senior coach one day.
Do you think so?
I think so, definitely.
Yeah. Does he have aspirations to that?
I reckon if the right person sort of gave him a wink and a nod, I reckon he would. But he tells me he doesn't want to do it. He's happy with how things are.
And what about yourself? Do you think this could be a sort of pathway to a more sort of AFL-focused coaching?
Potentially down the track. I'm absolutely loving it. I'm happy doing it with Haileybury at the moment, and sort of who knows what the future holds.
Yeah. And in that coaching role, are you focusing on like defence or forwards? Because you did a bit of time in both areas of the field, right?
Yeah, no, I'm a backline coach, so coaching the defence and the backline and the back six and working with those guys. And I've been shocked at the level that these 17-year-olds are at.
Yeah.
So you can come in and you can teach them proper AFL sort of tactics and body positioning and body work. It's been amazing.
And are these kids at 17, they're getting geared up for the AFL draft, right? So they also would be competing in the under 18s.
In the Coach League, yep.
Yeah.
So we had Harry Armstrong from Haileybury get drafted to Richmond.
Okay.
And I would have loved him to go to Essendon. He's going to be a star, I think. And Taj Houghton as well. So a couple of guys got drafted last year, and there'll be a couple more again this year, I think.
Do you get recruiters coming around watching the club, watching
you do.
the school training?
It's quite funny. You've got the school oval, you've got the parents, and then you've just got a lot of random people on a deck chair. Like, it looks like it's a Sunday picnic.
Track watchers.
Yeah, and that's a recruiter from one of the teams. So they're there every week.
They got the binoculars.
That's right, the binoculars
and the behind the ear.
The notepad and all that.
Interesting, and they've got their own chair.
You can spot them from a mile away. Yeah.
That's funny. That's quite funny. Well, that's good. Okay, well, I imagine that keeps you busy. And so, do you go to many games as an Essendon fan? Like, does it still wind you up watching the boys play?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because definitely I do. I went to a fair few games last year, and I'm still close with a couple of the guys, but you become a supporter, and when you're playing, you're a bit more sheltered because you're thinking, well, next week we need to do this and we can fix that.
Yeah.
And then you also engage a lot more with the community. So I'm speaking to more people day to day. So you actually go, I feel the frustration that you guys feel, or I feel the happiness you guys feel a bit more. Whereas as a player, you're so focused, you want to win more than anything.
Yeah.
But you move on the Monday. Whereas I don't think you move on as...
No, we don't.
Oh, no, we never move on. We're holding
it takes
on
a bit longer.
Which is the reason we exist as a channel, because we can't move on so readily. Then
it's part of the
we have to vent.
The nothing done. Yes. So it's good to hear that you're joining us and you're watching a game and just going, just kick it.
That's right.
And saying stupid stuff.
That's right. No.
Well, that's good. So I'm going to jump straight into a viewer question. Now, this is from Talia Mason. Maybe it's Mason Talia. I'm not sure. We don't know with his YouTube handles, but I thought it was a good question. So, Cale, even though you were mostly a key defender throughout your 13 years at the club, there were often times you were asked to play as tall forward, especially during the 2017 season, where you kicked 41 goals in that really fun, dynamic forward line alongside Danaher, Fantasia, Tipper, Green and Stewart. What was it like making that change at first, and did you enjoy playing in that part of the ground?
Yeah, well, I think what happened, I was a key defender, and then I think it was Hurdy's idea. He threw me forward a couple of times. I kicked goals, and then maybe I cost myself. I played too well up there, and then they thought, this is not a bad idea, and sort of tried it. And then it was always more of a pinch hitting thing. If we're in trouble, let's try and throw him forward. Yeah. And then in that year, Hayden Skipworth was the forwards coach, and I think he was just trying to recruit all the talented players to the forward half to help him. Yeah. And they decided to play me forward with Joey, and I think you had Joey Danaher, Fantasia, Greeny, Tipper, Greeny, James Stewart. It was a really good forward line. Yeah. And our idea was to try and stack it with our talent and kick as many goals as we can. And it was quite a good year as a forward line, and loved it. Yeah. And it was awesome to work with.
I think Danaher might have been an All-Australian that year.
Yeah, he was. I think he won the Crichton Medal that year and kicked 60 goals.
So it was a pretty solid lineup. Yeah. And I think we lost the elimination final against the Swans, if I can remember correctly.
But to answer that question, making the challenge is when you're a defender, you start the game, and if you're 10 minutes into the game and you've had one possession or two possessions, but your man hasn't touched it, you sort of feel good.
Yeah, right.
Whereas as a forward, you're running around and it's 8 minutes into the game, you haven't touched it yet. Yeah. So there's a bit more pressure to sort of create and get into the game.
So is it more nerve-wracking being a defender, having to stop, key forward from scoring, or do you feel a bit more freer as a forward?
You feel more
not
relaxed.
Under that immediate.
I always joke with the guys, you sleep beautiful the night before as a forward. Absolutely beautiful. Whereas a defender, you're thinking, well, I hope the midfield puts the pressure on, because if they don't, I'm going to look like an idiot in front of a lot of people. Yeah. So it's easier to be consistent as a defender, I think, but it's also probably more stressful.
Yeah. Because you weren't too shabby with an intercept mark. Do you, when you do that, or you cut off a forward move, do you say to yourself, I just cut off 2 goals there? I'm down for 4 goals saved. Do you come up that way?
No, you certainly get a thrill every time you get an intercept mark, and you're trying to do that, and it's a good thing for the team if you can get it.
Yeah.
I always like to try and go for my marks and create the play that way than the spoils, and I preach the same thing to all the Haileybury boys at the moment.
So is it fair to say that the defenders in the football team are the unsung heroes, right? Because you don't get a Brownlow vote for doing that, do you?
Yeah, well, there's a great saying that the defence wins you the premiership and the forwards puts the bums on seats.
Yeah.
And I think there is a bit of that.
Yeah.
But probably the thing is the midfield. If your midfield's on top and going well, whether you're a forward or a back, you can look like a star. Whereas if you're getting torched in the midfield, it doesn't matter where you're playing.
Yeah.
It's pretty tough.
So as a junior, were you a forward or a defender? You were probably always a big guy.
Believe it or not, I was a midfielder, and I was pretty short.
Really?
Yeah, and then I grew when I was 17, so I was a beanpole. I was about 70 something kilos and 6'5", playing on the wing to start with, and then I went forward and back in my last year before I got drafted, and then sort of became a key defender.
So going back to those days, back in Perth, obviously, your first club was
East Fremantle
in the Waffle.
Yeah.
What age were you when you first played the first senior game in that club?
So I actually got drafted straight out of the Colt system, so the under 18s. I was 19, played as a top age player.
Okay.
And played in a reserves grand final. We lost in overtime that year for East Fremantle.
Right.
And then I got picked straight to Essendon.
So went straight across to the Bombers. So no senior games with East Fremantle?
No senior games. Then I started playing the VFL in my first year for Bendigo Bombers, sort of while I was on the Essendon list. And I just, about halfway through the year, I was playing forward. And I started playing quite well, and I think I had 2 weeks in a row I kicked 4 goals. I thought, I'm starting to get the hang of it.
Yeah.
And then Matthew Knight got me in the office and said, we've got Lloyd, Lucas, Courtney Johns, Scott Gumbleton, Joe Danaher's getting drafted next year. There's probably not room for you in the forward line. Let's play in the back line. And then I sort of found my way that way and became a key defender.
Possibly Matthew's greatest contribution to the Essendon Football Club was that moment of foresight.
Maybe. And having Dustin Fletcher down there was the ultimate
well, you did have some pretty decent players around you.
So you're sort of going back a step, were you wanting to be drafted by a Victorian club because you're from WA, or were you hoping to sort of stay local?
So believe it or not, I actually was hoping to get drafted by a Victorian club, and I didn't know how lucky I was at the time to get drafted by Essendon, but part of me was happy to move to where footy is, which is Victoria, and also not have all the distractions of my mates, 18th birthdays and 21st birthdays, and that part of me was happy to go and give it a crack. So, it worked out pretty well.
That's very disappointing.
So on draft night, or draft day, whenever it was, you were back in Perth.
So back then, I remember there wasn't the show that it is now. It was afl.com.au, and you had to load this link that doesn't load very quick.
with a dial-up.
So I don't know where my future is.
You're not that old, mate.
And I was meant to be playing cricket that day, and I said to the coach, look, I might not be able to play today. I might, but I might not. I'll just have to let you know in the morning. And it was 5:30 a.m. in Perth because of the time difference.
Of course.
And it came up as pick 54. It just comes up as a little like a line.
Did you know that Essendon was going to come for you?
I knew that they were interested. I'd met with a few clubs. I met with Essendon. Adrian Dedoy rang me the day before and just said, do you think you're going to be a good player? I said, yep.
So he was,
and then he said he just hung up.
Very detailed recruitment.
So
that's quite a.
So I don't know I don't think he wanted to give it away, but and there's a bit of a story actually. So West Coast were by far the keenest team, and they had me in their top 20 players, and they had pick 53, which is the pick before me. And then I'm not sure exactly when it was, in the months before the draft. Ben Cousins was the hot player at the time, and he had too much to drink, and then drove down the freeway drunk, and then the cops pulled him over, and then he got out and swam across the Swan River. I don't know if you guys remember back then.
That's no short swim, is it?
That's no short swim, and they ended up finding him. And the sanction for the Eagles was they lost pick 53. So that drunken night of Ben Cousins actually changed my future.
Sliding doors.
Yeah, that's right.
That is quite the story.
Yeah.
Wow.
And what was your family's reaction to you being drafted by a club like Essendon and going over to Victoria?
Yeah, they were just happy. I think it was obviously my dream to get drafted, and you know that you don't get to choose where you go, so they were pumped. The mum was pretty sad that I was going into state, and she cried at the airport or held a few tears back, and they wrote me a nice note to read on the plane, which was pretty special. But then as soon as I came over, I was really well looked after by the club. You go to Windy Hill, and I hadn't experienced like the history and you see all the cups, and you get sort of taught about being an Essendon person, and that was pretty special. So as soon as that happened, you sort of fall in love with the club, and that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and when you came across to the club, obviously new to town, where did you stay? Were you sort of, what's the word, put in custody of somebody.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So we stayed at the Man Alexander Holiday Inn for a couple of nights, which is across the road from Windy Hill. So it was me, Tate Pears and Dave Myers all in one room, just in three separate beds for a couple of nights.
Myers from Perth as well.
And Tate as well. So we all flew on a plane together.
Right.
And then they put me with a family. Adrian Hickmont was a coach, and his cousins were renovating a house. So I went with them for 2 weeks, and then I was meant to move, and we were just staying in the garage of the house, and I was meant to move at 2 weeks, and I said thanks to the mum, Mandy, and she sort of said, well, how come you're moving out? Where are you going? And they were sending me somewhere else. And then she said, you can stay here if you want. And so I ended up staying there for 2 years instead of 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I slept in the garage for the first year during the Melbourne winter, just in a bed there, and then worked my way inside over the next year.
Oil heater by the side.
No, that's right. But they were an amazing family, the Hickmont family, and looked after me. And without them, looking back, I think I would have been a bit... not had the same career or lifestyle in Melbourne, because you come home, you've got a family environment, they cook for you, look after you. They were amazing.
Yeah.
I think that's the challenge with all of these young guys coming from interstate, whether you're going east or west.
Yeah.
It's that early first year to get them acclimatised, settled,
form some good habits.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So you started just after the Sheedy Herd era, as you mentioned. So Matthew Knights was the first coach, and Matthew Lloyd was your first captain. Interesting that you're working with him now. So did anyone take you under their wing? Did anyone have a positive or negative influence in your first couple of years?
Yeah, it's a hard one. I think the guys were really good. I was lucky. We had a lot of really good senior role models. Like you had Matthew Lloyd, Scott Lucas, Mark McVeigh, Andrew Welsh, Joe Watson, but even guys like Damien Peveril and Jason Johnson were still there at the time, and they were just good. You're a young 19-year-old working out your way in the world, and they were just great sort of mentors. So I was really lucky with all those guys. They were actually a good influence, believe it or not. And then, I made a lot of friendships. Ended up living with Angus Monfries for a few years. So Gussie. Nice. So he looked after me.
Did he?
A bit, and then all the guys are pretty good.
Yeah, okay.
So first game?
First game.
Do you remember it?
Was against I think it was the Bulldogs.
You're right.
Very good. You are right, correct.
So I played the Bulldogs and Saints in the practice game.
Yeah.
Then the next year. And then I played the Bulldogs and Saints that year. And in the next pre-season, I played the Bulldogs and Saints in the first 2 games.
So you were a specialist in that.
So that's right. That's right.
So tell me about the first game. And what was the feeling like when you found out you were going to be in the team? And then more importantly, the night before, how did you cope with the anxiety, the nerves?
I think it was a bit of it's just, so special, and you tell your family, and it's a bit of like, you don't even know if it's real kind of thing, because it's such a big thing to play your first game. I was actually pretty relaxed going into the game and that sort of thing. But it was just really special and excited to. I sort of had that dream just to play one game when I got drafted. The rest is a bonus. So once you got that, I was like, no one can take I played for Essendon now.
Yeah.
And then after a few games, your focus quickly shifts to, all right, now I want to become a really good player. Now I want to win a premiership. Now I want to do all these sort of things.
Yeah.
So.
And you had 26 from the first game, right, on the back?
Yep, always number 26.
Yeah, no, you didn't get the 54 or the 48.
No, I was pretty lucky looking back, and I was sitting next to Scotty.
54 draft pick, it's pretty good to get that.
That's right. I was lucky.
Bomber Thompson.
Bomber Thompson, and I was sitting next to Scotty Lucas in the locker room.
Yes.
Who was a pretty good guy to sit next to. A nice level head.
Yeah.
He made it pretty clear to keep my stuff on my side of the locker. That was his punishments, but
is that right?
Bit of a tyrant.
He looked at me on the first day, and he with his finger, he sort of put a line there and said, "Just make sure your stuff stays on this side."
Is that right? Yeah. Oh, Scotty, eh?
Well, there you go. He's laying down the law.
That's right.
So 25. Who was on the other side? 27 would have been.
So back then it was Jason Laycock, but the locker rooms were 1 to 26, and then the other locker room was the higher numbers. So there was sort of the Toorak Broadmeadows joke. I just snuck into Toorak, luckily.
The elite.
But now with the new facility, which is amazing, and everyone's in the same room, which is probably the better setup.
Yeah. So, Cale, you play your first game. You're underway. 2008 it was, yeah?
Yep.
So then you have that sort of period of sort of early growth, early development, and you just mentioned that your ambition was then to become the best player you could become. How did those first early years play out for you along those lines? Yeah,
so when I played at the end of my first year, the sort of season was over in a way, so they were sort of probably playing the kids a little bit, so I was lucky to get a game, and then it was really motivating for the next year on what I needed to do and to become a better AFL player. And then I had a good start to my second year. I played mostly in the VFL the first 7 weeks of the VFL season, which starts before the AFL back then. And I was getting sort of best on every week. And the older guys were just saying, mate, just keep getting best on.
Yeah.
Don't worry, you'll get the team eventually, but don't have a down week. Every week they're talking about you. And then someone got injured, I think it was David Hill might have actually done his knee on Anzac Day.
Okay.
And then they brought me in the week after, and then I stayed in the team, I think, most of that year, and sort of kept going
running,
from there.
basically.
Yep.
So in that time, you had Dustin Fletcher, of course, a club legend, 400 gamer. Michael Hurley as well, I'm assuming would have been playing down. He was a bit of a swingman too for a while.
He was such a good forward, but then he kept getting injured. So I think it was Bomber that shifted him back, which was a pretty good need. And then he became a really good key defender. We're great to play
and
with.
I guess you two guys played a lot of football together back in defence for a long time for the Bombers. I will point out one thing you may not realise, but actually Hurley just pips you on goals per game.
Does he really?
So you're averaging 0.55 goals per game, and your great friend and comrade at arms was averaging 0.56. So he just
he probably deserves it, because I think he was a better forward than me. So he's done well.
He could kick off both feet.
That's right. Beautiful.
Pretty amazing off both feet. So going through that time, so I think Knights lasted till about 2011, and then Hurd came to the club. The Messiah, if you like, James Hurd, and came with Bomber Thompson as well as his assistant coach. How was the feeling when that was announced? Because that was huge news for the football club, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. It was massive. And it was a really good move. It was awesome. Hurdy came in with a bit of a dream team, coaching team, Bomber and Brendan McCarthy and Simon Goodwin, Sean Wellman, Maddig, and like awesome coaches. And I instantly became a better player from all those coaches. Right. They sort of taught me how to play. I sort of felt like I went from a good player to a more of a very good player from all the coaching and the lessons I was getting. So now that was definitely a spike. And did Hurd have that aura about him?
Oh, yeah.
And the players could sense that. I mean, a lot of the guys would have played with him, of course. I think, he finished in 2007. But for a lot of the younger kids, I'm sure
back then, the aura was incredible. So, and I think it helped him recruit players, recruit good coaches, and massive aura.
Because we brought Goddard into the team.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm sure having him as a coach would have helped that.
Yeah, for sure. Right. So that side, if you look at that, 2012 to say 2015, there was a pretty solid squad of players. Of course, there were issues happening outside of the football team that may have affected the performances, but just tell us about that team and how far could that side have gone without the distractions.
That's right. You never know for sure, because you can't predict the future, and I'm sure there's other teams that were trying to do things that didn't work out. But you could feel we had a pretty good core squad through that time and building. We probably needed to potentially add one more midfield, but we had a pretty good spine. We had Paddy Ryder and Tommy Bell in the ruck. We had pretty good spine, really good. I think he was. There was after Lloyd. We were building pretty nicely and pretty settled club, good coaching group. Like, we're starting to build pretty well, and then obviously a few distractions came along, which unsettled things, which is a shame. But it's part of life.
Could that side have pushed deep into the finals without those external distractions?
Yeah, there's no doubt. And you could see we were pretty close. But in saying that, it's so hard. You look at each year the ladder, like someone's going to jump this year from 12th to 2nd. And you need a little bit of luck along the way, but all you can really do is sort of build that list. You can see Brisbane have done it. They've built that list over time. I think Essendon are doing it now at the moment really well, building the list in the right way, making smart decisions. And then you sort of give yourself a chance for 3 or 4 years to have a crack at it. And unfortunately, it didn't help us with the timing of all that, but that's life. That's what happens.
In 2012, I think there was some interest from the Eagles. Even though you had, I think, a year left on your contract. Is it because of what you just said and the team was there that you didn't even, or did you consider it?
Yeah, so the story goes there. So basically, I was a little bit injured in 2012. I had a bit of hammy stuff, and the club knew. And then at the end of that year, I thought, I'm going to go get a running coach and get this hamstring issue fixed, and a kicking coach to tidy my kicking up. So I went and did that, and I was already doing it. And then about a month later, just before trade period, there was rumours, West Coast are talking with Essendon about recruiting me. Dug into it a bit deeper with my manager, and he said, look, Mitch Brown from the Eagles, which was not the one that played for Essendon, the other one, was trying to go to St Kilda.
He was the one that Sheedy did the
Did he?
Cutthroat.
Is that right?
Yeah, back in the days before you played.
So he got offered a really good contract to the St Kilda. St Kilda said, we wanted him. Eagles said, we'll trade him on the condition we get a key defender of similar age, similar player. And I don't know if they identified me or how it worked.
Right.
They spoke to Essendon, offered Essendon pick 20. Then there was a bit of rumours. I rang Adrian Door. I said, what's going on? I'm hearing this rumour. Is there any truth? He said, Cale, you're an Essendon player. We would never trade you. We would never do anything like that. We love you, blah, blah, blah. I said, won't worry. Then 3 days later, Essendon got offered pick 20 and 22. So for them, it's actually not a bad deal. I've got hamstring problems. They know I'm training. Yeah. 2 pretty good draft picks. Yeah. They're thinking, we've got pretty good. And then I get a call from Adrian and he goes, Cale, I've actually been thinking, maybe it is good if you went home. You know, your family's there and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, hang on a second. And then I did a bit of investigating, thought about it, and I was like, well, they don't know I'm fit and firing and ready to go, and I don't want to win a premiership with the Eagles. I want to win one with Essendon, with the guys that, they took the chance on me. I'm friends with these guys. I love the club. I want to win it with Essendon, not anywhere else. So then I decided to stay. And then the deal breaker was sort of Bomber Tom. Adrian was trying to ring me. I was sort of dodging his calls, and then Bomber rang me, and I spoke to him. And he just said, look, this is the situation, explained it all. And then he goes, what do you want to do? It's up to you. We'll support you either way. And I said, look, I got one question. If I stay, will you hold it against me? And he said, absolutely not. He said, we pick our best team. So after this is done, it's done. So they said, well, I'm staying then. And then I made sure I turned up extra fit that year. So it was a bit of a motivator for me. And Bob was just laughing and gave me a big hug when I saw him. And then we never spoke about it again.
Right.
So well, that was the background.
That's good story. And you really sorted out the hammy then, obviously, because you went on to be All-Australian in 2014.
Yeah, but it was a bit of a pivotal moment. I've employed a guy called Adam Larkham, who's a specialist running coach, works with a lot of sprinters, is a physio, really talented guy. And as I sort of did this injury prevention stuff, I actually started getting fitter and faster, and it was like an unexpected benefit. So not only did I fix the hamstring problem, I actually became fitter and faster. So it was really sliding doors moment for me meeting him.
Yeah, right. Well, which brings us nicely to a couple of special moments that we wanted to focus on, and one was that in 2015 against the Hawks when we came from behind. Don't know if you remember this that game, but you had a very special moment there in the dying minutes, and I think it was, if I can just quickly try and surmise, DT, help me out here, but I think Collier sort of kicked a goal, so there was 1 minute 20 remaining, and then somehow you turn up in the forward line. And what I wanted to ask was, because in the vision that you see, James Hird, who you mentioned was behind potentially you going to the forward line. Yep. You see him jumping on the phone, and then all of a sudden you turn up in the forward line, the ball gets down there, and somehow you rove the ball and kick from the pocket, truly, and win us the game.
Curled it in.
Yes.
Yeah, so
everyone went nuts, and I think, who was it that said, what the hell's he doing down there?
Someone of the commentators, there was a...
Yeah, I went nuts as well, don't worry. I was feeling the same way as the commentator, so what do I do with that? Yeah, so the background of that is, leading into the season, I think that was round 2, we did have a bit of a preset play where it wasn't 6-6-6 back then, so if the team's in front, they could play people behind the ball. Yeah. So if they sent one behind the ball, I go and man them up and maybe be a dangerous threat. And we tried it a few times in pre-season, and it worked. And then it was a close game. We'd kick that goal, and I remember thinking it was about a minute and a half to go. We're 2 goals down. It was sort of like, it felt like the game's probably over. Yeah. But then we got that goal, and then I was like, well, we've got a short amount of time. I went forward, rolled the dice, and got a bit lucky. The ball started to land in my lap, and I snapped it over my shoulder, and luckily it went through. It was a pretty special moment. Yeah. And then I remember, because the week before we lost to Sydney, I don't know if you remember, in a sort of similar scenario. So it just felt huge to be 1-1 against, I think Hawthorn were the reigning premiers at the time.
Yeah,
so
they would have been,
to be 0-2 after being ahead in 2 games would have been pretty heartbreaking, but I felt like it was a big moment where we were then 1-1 and in the season. And I remember walking down Bay Street the next day in Port Melbourne feeling pretty happy. There was a big smile, and this lady came up to me and gave me this massive hug.
Really?
She was at Essendon's boy, and she started crying and saying, that was amazing. And I was like, I'll never
that.
I'll never forget that moment. It was sort of, oh, okay, cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So
it must be incredibly enjoyable, those moments. Like, does it live up to playing in the backyard when you're sort of, you're envisioning it, to then actually delivering in a clutch goal?
Yeah.
It must be supremely enjoyable.
Yeah. You obviously, you have lots of tough moments out there where there's a lot of people looking at you if you make an error and stuff like that, so you've got to take the good moments as well.
I think the master plan, though, would have been for you to plonk yourself somewhere about 40 metres out from goal and take the big pack mark.
Yeah, that's right. I wasn't meant to be...
Not the roving, sort of snapping it around the corner on the run.
It didn't exactly fall in your lap.
So I don't think Kurt can take credit for that, right?
So the other one, also incredibly enjoyable, when we were down against GWS. So this is 2019. I think it was sort of middle of the season, but we were down. That game also felt over to me.
Yeah.
And then... the ball goes to the forward line. I think it was sort of Crumb. Then you sort of get your hands on the ball. You get it so it's sort of almost near the sort of 50-metre arc. You get the ball to Langford, who then kind of half fumbles, gets it over to Connor McKenna, who then is charging forward with a kick, and then you very quickly scuttled down to top of the goal square and clunked a mark, a very nice one. Tell us about that. What you were thinking.
Yeah, the good thing about when you play the first half of the game in the back line, you can cut. Dustin Fletcher taught me how to sort of cut the angles a bit and save a bit of energy. So when they throw you forward for a quarter, you got a bit more energy than everyone else, which is sort of my secret weapon. So I was a bit fresher, I think, and managed to kick a couple of goals that quarter. And Sean McKernan had a really good last quarter that game as well. And it was, I think, we had to win that to stay in the hunt for final, so it was a big moment as well. So I celebrated in style, and we're pretty happy that, once again, I was a bit lucky at the right place at the right time, but it worked out.
You've become a sort of a match-winning legend by this stage.
Well, and that one I tried to take as long as I could for the set shot, because I knew there was like 40 seconds left and there's a 30-second shot clock, so I was trying to just go as slow as I could.
Very nicely done. Thank you as well. Any hugs down on Bay Street, Port Melbourne?
I missed out that week.
But you did win the Crichton Medal that year, I believe. So which is so that would have been based on mainly defence that season with a little bit up forward.
Yeah, I think so. I think I ended up playing forward. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think the last 6 weeks or something like that. Yeah.
Then if we can move forward to 2017, we're skipping a year. Obviously, you've taken a holiday in Nice, working on the tan. Yeah,
that's right.
And then the boys come back for first round 2017, which I'm sure every Essendon supporter remembers very, very fondly. Yeah. You might recall there was the big march to the G.
Oh, that was awesome.
In support of the team, and particularly the guys coming back. That first game, again against Hawthorn, so a lot of your magic moments against the Hawks.
That's right. I get tingles thinking about that game even now, and you talking about it. I remember there was the march, and then I remember we ran out. It was probably the loudest roar I've ever heard, and it was just us running onto the ground. Yeah. It wasn't even... And I think we had a hot start and kicked a couple of early goals, and the crowd was like, if there was a roof on the MTG, it would have been gone. And once again, Hawthorn were a pretty good team during that era, and I think we beat them pretty comfortably.
You're right,
Yeah,
it was I think from memory, it was 75,000 people at the G for the game, and the famous post-game video and footage and photos from the dressing room. Yeah, and we'll put some of these images up with yourself and Job, Dyson, Mick Hurley. Yeah. It just felt like redemption for you guys at that time. How did you feel? That must have been very emotional at the time.
Yeah, it was. I mean, you've obviously got the big picture of the season in mind, but it's when you miss a year, you're thinking about that first game for so long, such a long period of time, and we all went through a lot of different challenges and didn't know where everyone would be, and everyone sort of ended up sticking together mostly, which was pretty awesome. And we also knew how much the fans were hurting as well, and the people around Essendon, like, they're hurting just as much as us. So it sort of felt like special in that way. It felt bigger than just us. It felt like hopefully the fans can see some hope again and some enjoyment and the future.
And it ended up being a very good year actually for the Bombers. 2017. We actually made the finals that year, but you had a great year, of course.
I did. I actually had a fracture in my fibula the last round, so I missed that final against Sydney, which was
you didn't play in that?
I didn't play. So, but you're right. We had an okay year. besides that final.
Yeah. I think you kicked, was it 40-odd goals that season?
I think something like that.
41-26.
Yeah.
So by this time, you've really become entrenched in the forward line.
Yeah. I slowly got more accurate as my career went on.
And there was also that period of time when Joey was sort of missing in action with his various injuries. I think he had some groin-related injuries. So you really kind of filled that void.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that kept me playing forward a lot. And Sean McKernan seemed to come in a lot to help that as well. And he was an underrated player, I think, out forward. He chipped in often when Joey was out. Usually it was good for 2 or 3 goals a game.
How good was Joe Danaher?
Yeah, he's obviously a star. We saw what he did last year with the Brisbane, sort of got him across the line. He's a star. It was a shame we couldn't get him on the park more when he was playing for us. But often as a key position player, you do develop later. So he's probably matured. And then just as he became a star, he decided to retire in a classic Joe way. But it was nice to see him.
He's an interesting cat, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, there's the great thing about footy clubs is there's so many different people and different personalities, and everyone gets along. But yeah, he's a star. Yeah.
Well, he was so influential in Brisbane's premiership. It makes you wonder, had we kept him at the Bombers?
Yeah, that's right.
How different would it have been? He certainly
would be pretty handy at the moment. Maybe once he's sunned himself for a year and he gets itchy feet. Matt Rosa and Brad Scott, and
he never played 100 games for the Lions. He played 100 games or more for the Bombers. So if Joey, you're out there watching, get busy, please.
That's right.
Yes, so Danaher family name, we've got to keep honouring that. So
we do, yes.
So 2017, 2018, you finished your career in 21, right?
Yep.
200 games, so that makes you one of the greats of the football club. By the time you got to the end of your career, what was your thinking as a player about how your body's holding up, how you're performing? What sort of pressure do you feel as a footballer, knowing that Father Time is creeping up on you?
Yeah, that's right. Well, for me, my attitude, and certainly my last year, was just to leave no stone unturned, which was sort of my whole career. And then whenever it finishes, it finishes. But I can sort of have that contentment that I gave it everything. And that was sort of my attitude the whole way. And I was one of those guys, I'm going to play as long as I can until they push me out the door kicking and screaming. Or some guys like to go out on their own terms and stuff. I was pretty happy for, once the club tells me that's enough, I'll be gone. But until then, I'll try and do everything I can to help us win a premiership, to help us be a good team, to keep going in the right direction. It was the same as any other year in a way. I think I ran a PB time trial in my last year, so I hadn't fallen off the cliff too far yet.
Nice.
So
And how was COVID? How did that affect you? You went to the hub, right?
Yeah, it was really difficult for everyone. It was a strange thing playing in front of no crowds. It didn't suit me playing every 3 days, that's for sure. I much prefer having a week between games. And you couldn't use your same routines and habits and physio or those things, so you were quite restricted. But from the whole life perspective, we didn't have it too bad because we got to travel around and do things and still play footy, whereas some people were stuck in their houses. So from that point of view, we're pretty lucky. But from a pure football sense, it wasn't ideal.
So how long were you in the hub for?
I can't even remember. I tried to block it out of my memory.
Period of time.
It was 6 weeks when there was it was quite a few games within that 6 week period.
It was on the Gold Coast, wasn't it?
They pumped them out,
And even I remember 2021, we were in the hunt for finals. I think we had Sydney and the Giants at Etihad or Marvel, and we were due to play them. I think this is a 21 year. And then there was COVID in Sydney, so because of that, they sent us all to Queensland to play that game. So then we had to play them on Metricon. So we lost our home ground advantage. We lost 2 close games. And there were moments where you're like, it's a bit of a weak excuse. You should be able to win anywhere, but it would have helped us in front of the Essendon fans to play those games, and that could have got us into finals that year. So it wasn't ideal.
I mean, without being too unfair, it was the premiership in 2020 a valid premiership?
I think so.
So, I mean, the winning, who was it that year?
I think the Demons. I think it is. I think every club...
That was 21, I think, the Demons.
Maybe the Tigers.
I think
it is.
They beat Geelong.
That was in Brisbane, wasn't it? The grand final was in Brisbane.
I think so.
I can tell you if we won it, I'd be telling you it was a legitimate win. So
as we would too.
I think everyone had the same, tough circumstances.
So just a couple of... If you just quickly, just the whole finals drought thing. I mean, you played your whole career without winning in the final. You played several finals, but did that play on your mind? Did it play on the team's mind, or was it just a non-issue?
I think it's, you're part of the club. It's hard. I'm sure the guys hear it at the moment. It wasn't a big focus, but I think people are aware of it. That's for sure. Yeah. And it's something you're working hard to rectify. But in saying that, you'd be working just as hard whether you'd won the final 2 years before or a year before.
Right.
Yeah.
Coaches and teams are pretty good at focusing on what they need to focus on, but. Yeah, I mean, I can even feel it as a supporter. You feel like you just want to, come on, guys, come on, But you also know, well, you've got to go through the right process. You've got to plan. You can see what they did. I think what they did with Kako this year is really smart. We've got a first-round pick next year. Get the right player in. Maybe they're going to recruit someone. Maybe they're going to use those picks before Tassie come in. You can see it's calculated. You can see there's a thinking behind it and a build. Whereas the trap is you go, we just need to win a final. Let's just do sort of erratic things. But I really like the way you've got Craig Vozza, who's a really smart operator, Brad Scott, really smart operator, sort of building. For me, it feels like they're making the right steps.
And Matt Rosa, now head of recruitment.
Yep, that's right.
So it's a really new world, isn't it, for the Bombers? I don't think there's too many in the administration or the playing list, for that matter, that sort of predated the sort of 2012 to 2015 era. So it is pretty much a whole new show, isn't it?
That's right. All footy clubs move so fast through the eras. So
Dyson finished last year.
That's right.
Probably the last of that.
That's
that
exactly
era.
right. And for Craig, Brad, and these guys, it's in a way irrelevant to them that Essendon hasn't won a final for 20 years, but. You're part of the team. It's your club now, so it's part of it. But I think they're going about it in the right way.
And Brad,
really
you never played with. You wouldn't have played with Brad. I think Rutten was your last coach.
No, really impressed by Brad. Obviously he was coach of North Melbourne for a long time. Got a lot of. Out of them, but speaking to some of the guys at the club, speaking to him sometimes here and there, I think I'm really impressed by him. He seems like he's a really experienced coach, understands the ups and downs of a season. I'm really impressed.
So speaking of coaches, you played under 5 coaches. Of those, who do you think was most likely, and obviously we mentioned the distractions at the time, but of those 5 coaches, who was most likely, do you think, had the most potential to take us to the promised land?
Well, without disrespecting the other coaches, because they were all good in their own ways, but without doubt, Bomber Thompson was the best. And his ability to teach the game, his ability to understand a play if they needed to, hit on the head or if they needed to cuddle, all those sort of things. And we all talk about, we had meetings with Bomber and you didn't know what the answer was. Most coaches, they're leading you to did you go out on the weekend? They're leading you to a thing. With him, you just don't know what to say. Right. So you just have to be open and honest. And it sort of created this good environment where he sort of knew guys and knew how to get the best out of them. We had a game we played against Richmond one year and we got to the meeting and we walk in and the whiteboard was empty. So normally there's plans, team, everything. It was just empty.
Is this a pre-game?
Pre-game before dream time.
Okay, right.
And we get there and everyone's looking at each other, what the hell's going on here? And it was a big game. And then he just coached and wrote all these things down over the next 5 minutes and we ran out there and we won by 70 points. And then in the leadership meeting, the guys were saying, we don't like that, we want it planned. But I think he knew how to relax us and how to do different things to sort of motivate the group. So
he had a very interesting media demeanour, Bomber, right? You never knew how to take him. Right?
Exactly, and it was the same as a player. Sometimes you didn't know he'd come yelling and screaming, and sometimes he'd be really caring and really helpful. So I think that was part of his coaching act.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. No. Well, I mean, because that's one of the things that I wanted to ask, because we come from sort of the corporate world, and I was just wondering whether you had a view. What's the most effective way to coach a team? Is it love or fear? Or is it that combination? Like, what do you think works best?
I think one of the things I try to do as a coach is believe in your players and create that belief. Maybe each coach has a different style for what works best for them and maybe what works for that group. But one of the big things I think is creating belief and helping guys and showing guys. Something Bomber was really good at is you'd go to a place as a player you maybe didn't realise you could position or doing certain things. So it's if the coach wasn't there, they'd be this, but if the coach is there, they're much better.
Okay, good point. Good point. That's that's highly valuable.
Was Bomber disappointed that he couldn't stay longer? I mean, that certainly seemed to be. There was a little bit of background noise around the herd coming back. Bomber was keen to stay from all reports. Was that your view?
Yeah, it's so hard as a player. You don't know exactly what's going on, especially then. He was fantastic. I'm sure in an ideal environment they would have kept everyone and kept that going. It was working really well, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it was a fantastic panel of coaches at that
Yeah,
time.
that's right.
With both him and James, and great Essendon men, of course.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think perhaps one of the questions a lot of people has is, when was the right time to stop being Essendon-centric and bringing outside talent in? And so you've got Craig Fotso, who came across from the Eagles. I think he was with Adelaide as well for some period of time. Obviously, Brad's come from North and AFL.
Yeah.
So you've got this sort of external look at the club rather than it being, because there was a lot of talk about potentially Hurd coming back.
Yeah.
Do you think that was needed for us to sort of move on and stop looking back so much?
I think they made the right call, and I think it's more about what's the best available and what's the best thing for the club right now. And it's those, whether Brad was at Essendon or not, it's almost irrelevant, because he's going to come in and he respects the club's history and he's going to grow the club's history. He's going to be part of the club's history. Same with Craig. I think they're the best people for the job. So,
well, if they can never bring a premiership, they're going to have bronze statues.
That's exactly
somewhere around the hangar, aren't they?
That's right.
So it's definitely the opportunity, isn't it, to make your own history now. So you finished your career in 2021. You didn't get the last game. Did you have any? That was sort of felt like a bit of a media thing, but was it
a beat up, or were you offended?
I think it's important to look after your older guys on the way out. I think that, especially, you saw with Tommy Bell-Chambers, it was almost ridiculous. The season was over. You've got to look after your old guys. I think the young guys, it's good for your culture. The young guys see it and go, well, if I play 200 games or if I'm there for 15 years, I'm going to get looked after on the way out. Whereas if you just throw them to the side, I think it's not the right cultural fit. And I think Essendon people want to see it. Everyone wants to see it. For Tommy Bell, his family gets to come to the game and sort of finish on the right way. Especially someone like him that did so much for the club and stuck so fat with the club. I think for me, my last game was, we had the final and Ben didn't pick me for the final and Tipper, and I thought we should have played, and I think we would have the experience on the ground and I was ready to perform well. I think they looked to the youth too early. That was like, we'll give these guys some experience in the final, but we could have won that final, I think, with a better team. But that's life. That's the coaches make the decision. He's made the decision. That's the best team for the day.
I recall Hurley got the farewell game against the Tigers, I think it was.
I thought that
suffered with the long-term injury.
That was a great example of that was a really special day for him. Something he'll never forget. His family
he
never
kicked
forget.
The goal as well.
Kicked the goal, and he went through a lot with the club. He's now a coach at the club. You want to look after people.
How was your relationship with Michael Hurley throughout?
Yeah, fantastic. Still friends today. And we had so many good guys. Paddy Ambrose down there. Even Jackie Carlo down there for a while. Fletch, obviously.
Great defenders.
And even all the other guys around. Michael Hibbard. We had
Hibbard, of course.
We had a lot of good backmen down there.
We have some quick fire questions, I think, for Cale. Some of the typical footy show type questions.
We did. Well, I did want to talk about though this season. Just your thoughts though on the team.
Yeah, sure.
Before we get onto the sillier stuff, but because we are very keen to hear your thoughts. So very quickly, the Dons have won 11 games in the last 2 seasons, and they had the draw last year on Anzac Day. So this year, how many games do you see them winning?
It's hard to know, isn't it? It's hard to guess.
Given what they've recruited, who we've lost.
You'd love to see them win the 13 games and make finals, and I think the competition's so even that you never know. So that's what I'll be cheering for. 13 games and finals.
Okay, all right. So if you had to choose an X factor this year, who do you think that would be that would really move the needle on the side and make that impact?
Yeah, I think there's a fair few. A lot of the guys you saw in the practice game, I saw, they had Nick Martin up forward, Durham up forward at times. Quite a dynamic forward line. That'll be really interesting because they're probably lacking a key forward at the moment, but can the game plan and can the forward line be that dynamic that it sort of becomes a strength for us in a different way? I think that's going to be the X factor, how the forward line works and how they can get the ball movement going. But you can see the rest of the back. Zach Reed looked really good coming in. The midfield, there's a lot of support around Zach now. Draper, that's probably one if he can stay on the park all year.
Yes.
I think we all saw that game. It was pretty exciting. Even though practice games, the result doesn't really matter, I think it matters how you play because it shows what we're working on is working. Some positional things worked. The coaches would have tried some things. I think the way they played and the way they gritted through, I think they'll take a lot of confidence from that.
But do you agree? Because, Nick Martin was playing down back a lot, but, moving forward, like we always think, there's always 1 or 2 goals to be had, and, they're certainly needed. And you've got Dylan Shield now, so it seems to be something.
Yeah, Shield, he looked great off half-back, didn't he?
Yeah, I thought so.
Broke the lines, meters gained,
Yeah, and he's great at doing that, isn't he?
Yeah.
So, his disposal sometimes been questioned, but he was fantastic.
He just take the long option.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, all the buzz was, of course, around the 2 young forwards, Caddy and Kako. Interesting story that they went to school together, played junior footy together, and now they're at the Bombers together. These 2 kids could be a 10-year partnership and really define where we go.
That's right. You hope they play for the next 15 years together and become real stars. I think the big thing at the moment is you still need those senior bodies around them in the forward line, because you can't rely on these 2 young guys, so talented, but you can see they're trying to, but you need those other guys around them to look after them. We can't just rely on those 2 at this stage.
Well, they've got King Kyle.
That's right, Langford.
Down there.
Yeah, Langford.
Who's a particular favourite of ours. Who's a cool head in a crisis, isn't he, Kyle? He never looks phased, does he?
No,
he is a cool customer. Yeah,
he is. So, do you think we place? Just last question on that. Do you think we place too much pressure on young guys like that too early? Do you know what I mean? It's like Kako hasn't even played.
That's right. It's hard, isn't it? Because it's hard not to get excited. Yeah. It's good for them, but you're right. I think it's something clubs do try and manage the expectation and the overhype on a player before he's ready.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see like when Tip and Woody's playing, it's hard not to get excited. It's just electrifying.
Yes, that's right.
It's a hard one. It's good to see him go well.
We're going to get excited. So
yes.
No matter what the club does, I think those 2 boys have already.
Yeah, me too.
I bet there's going to be a lot of number 10 and 30.
Yeah, definitely.
Gary O'Donnell's going to be telling everyone that they've still got his old number on. Yeah,
that's right.
So, Smoking, you had some very hard-hitting questions for Cale to wrap up with. So
some not so hard. But so, who was your hardest opponent? Do you have?
I still think in his heyday, Travis Cloak, because he was so strong, was a really tough opponent, especially with the Collingwood midfield then of Swan, Pendlebury, and all those guys.
Right. Okay.
And then Cloak's, of course, down at the Bombers now. So.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's doing a good job down there.
Okay. All right. Who was the biggest troublemaker in the change rooms?
There was lots of them over the years. I think Jason Winderlick's one guy who was pretty cheeky around the rooms, especially early in my playing days. I'd go with him.
Oh, really? Okay. Yep. Was there a competition between you and Hurley over the best man bun? And if so, who won?
He wins it hands down, obviously. If you saw his beard, that beard that he can grow, no one else can grow a beard like that. I remember we hadn't seen him for a few months and he turns up and he looks like a homeless person. Yeah, it's amazing. It is amazing. That's right.
He did. Who was the best sledger that you played with? He got very lippy out on the field.
I wasn't much of a sledger, but Angus Monfries was pretty classic small forward. Classic small forward. Yeah, that's right. And always a little bit tougher if he's around a Tommy Bell Chambers or something. He gets a bit chirpier, but when he's by himself, not as chirpy.
Yes, right. Okay. Is there a game that you watch a replay of quite a bit?
Not really.
Really?
No.
Just too humble?
So, no.
Come on, haven't you got that Hawthorn win just there on
just to go? Probably a tough day.
Okay. Here's another one. Does it matter if the coach is up in the box or down on the boundary? What are your thoughts on that? 'Cause it's become very NFL style. Yeah. The coach on the boundary.
I think it can be overdone in the media because it depends on the group, the coaching group, the players, what they need. Yeah, it's.
Okay.
They've got a whole box load of coaches up there anyway, haven't they? So it's probably just to get in front of the players a bit more, communicate directly to the players.
That's the thing, if the players know what they're doing, or it depends how you set things up. If you've got a really trusted strategic person up top that can tell you everything, and then you can be, like you said, more personable with the players and more there. But then maybe there is
I reckon
there is
you're
an
cutting
argument.
off after kicking the ball out on the full or something, or terrible clanger and Brad Scott standing on the boundary line glaring at you. You're not making that mistake again, are you?
Well, it could go 2 ways, can't it? You might not come off if he's on the boundary line waiting for you.
True.
And I might wrap up.
What Nick Hine did was just sort of move a bit.
That's right.
That incident got talked about quite a bit. There's another viewer question. This is from Mark, I think it is. He wants to know, what is the next drop out of the Hooker lot 113 vineyard this year?
That's a good question, actually. We've got the Tempranillo coming, which is the Spanish variety, a little bit lighter, yeah, which is fantastic.
Where'd you get those grapes?
Can't say where we got them from, but that's right.
Picked up some seeds.
Dad's got them from somewhere. I don't know where, but they're ready. So that'll be coming soon.
Well, look out for that, Mark. That's going to be the.
So Hooker Wines is. Tell me, what sort of quantity of wine do you produce?
It's based in the Swan Valley, so we're boutique. So we sell at a few restaurants, but predominantly enough that Mum and Dad can manage it pretty much themselves in there.
And best way to get a case of that?
Probably online. Hooker Wines. Yep. Jump on there and have a look. Yep.
Brilliant.
We actually did a collaboration with the club for Zach of a few of the 200 game to celebrate their thing. So I think we've got maybe Zach's 250th if he plays it coming up later in the year. So we'll do something with him there.
Oh, really?
Early.
No, there you go.
That'll be a nice drop.
Yep.
Yes, indeed.
Lovely drop.
Darcy Parish is the other one too. We need to get him back out in the park, get him to 200.
Yes, that would be very handy.
Well, he's probably the only key player really not fit at the moment.
So. We'd love to get him going.
A lot of people under appreciate what he does. I think as a ball getter and a clearance player, he's fantastic, isn't he? So he would be a fantastic addition to our charge to the finals.
That's right.
This year.
Indeed.
I think that's about
I think we've
it for
kept
us.
you long enough. You're a busy man.
No, thanks for having me, guys. Great to have a chat.
Very good. That was very enlightening. Some good little stories in there. It's always nice insight, not just for us, but for our whole community as well. From everyone, it is very much appreciated.
Thank you, Cale. Great to see you, and we look forward to seeing you at the games this year, cheering on the red and black.
That's right.
And you've been a fantastic champion of our football club, and for that we're very grateful. And I know you're one of the most popular players that we've seen in the red and black in the last decade or so. So
thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Wonderful to see you. Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you soon. Take care.
Bye for now. Bye.